Chicago Bulls and Detroit Pistons, Boston Red Sox and New York Yankees, Duke and Chapel Hill. Where do you think we're going with this? Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson. I know I'm dating myself. Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon. Some hands going up. Believe it or not, back when I was in Georgia, I liked racing. Steffi Graf and Gabriela Sabatini. LeBron James and Kevin Durant. What do we know about all these? What's going on? What's the commonality in all these names? They're rivals, right? They're all rivals, which means this: they hate losing to each other. They're all rivals, which means they talk junk about each other. They're all rivals. Now, sometimes some of them are more rivals as a publicity stunt, because behind the scenes, they're doing fine. They get around and hang out, and they're best of friends. Now, in this message, as Ryan just introduced, this is the final part of the first gospel series. And I know it's been a blessing to you. It was definitely a blessing to me. But in this message, we're going to meet two of the oldest rivals in history. Oldest rivals, and still are and still will be. And there is no publicity stunt here. They are sworn enemies. And I'm talking about Jesus and Satan. Now, I know immediately if you grew up in Bible-believing church, you're thinking, wait a minute, you can't put them on the same level. I'm not. So just be patient. You have your Bibles, go and find Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15. And here's the main point of today's message. The ultimate rivalry in the history of the ages continues today and will until the end of time is between Jesus and Satan. But unlike earthly rivalries, Satan is no match for Jesus. None. He is just a fallen, created being, while Jesus is the Son of God, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. And he has already won the victory. So no comparison. Nonetheless, that's the rivalry of the ages. Genesis 3:15, we're going to get it right out of the text. That's the important part. We're not going to just, regurgitate and talk about old stuff that has been already done thousands of times over. We're getting it straight from the scriptures, and you will see why I said what I did. Genesis 3:15, God said, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." There's so much packed into that one simple verse. Next to John 3:16, this, I believe, is the most powerful verse in the Bible, if not right there with John 3:16. Now, very quickly, in the past two messages, the first message we learned about the choice that Adam and Eve had. They had a choice either to trust God, obey God, or to do things the Satan's way, the serpent's way. And they did. And they chose to disobey God. Second message, we learned that consequently there were damages. Of course, Adam and Eve's relationship was damaged. They were no longer one flesh. And down through the ages, husbands and wives, conflicts come in. And sometimes marriages don't end well. But there was also damage in the animal world. Previously, there was no predation. There was no predator and prey. But now there was violence and bloodshed. Then there was also a damage in the woman's life. We're talking about childbirth. We looked at this last weekend, but also in the man's life. Now he will eat, but by the sweat of his brow. The ground is not going to yield 100%. There will be thorns and thistles. So there will be a harvest, but boy, it's going to be hard work. So all these damages are there. But in the midst of all of that, God also gives the cure. And in this message, we're going to see that cure very carefully because it's in three parts. First is the enmity that he placed between the serpent and the woman. Let's look at Genesis 3:15 once again. God says this, and he's talking to the serpent. He's talking to Satan, who has possessed the serpent. God says in his curse, I will put enmity between you and the woman. Now, if you remember from last weekend, we know women just hate snakes. Is there any woman right here who loves snakes? I mean, maybe there's always one. Okay, no, okay. Now, men hate snakes too. I mean, I get it. But we know the natural dislike all over the world between women and snakes. But there's more involved here. Since Satan tricked Eve into eating the forbidden fruit, there is now going to be a natural dislike between Satan and the woman. We don't think about that, as much, but listen again to that verse. I will put enmity between you and the woman. There will be this hatred. And Satan will do everything possible to tear down the womankind. He said, what does that mean? I don't get it. I mean, I thought he tempts everybody equally, men and women equally. Yeah, right, he does. He tempts us. But listen, ladies, the temptations are sort of different. And I'm being generic. How does he tempt women? Well, if you think about the worst kind, the same thing he did with Eve. You're not good enough. You're not worthy enough. You're not beautiful enough. You're not smart enough. You don't work hard enough. He challenges your self-worth. Now, let's face it, men, we stand in front of the mirror and we think, well, who doesn't like this? I mean, we can have the ugliest hair. It's like, wow, I think I saw someone on TV with that hairstyle. I mean, it looks good. Women can stand there, be perfectly married, and all they see are blemishes and flaws. Where is that coming from? Nicole and I talk about this. It's Satan. It's Satan. You see how the same temptation. Do you want to be like God? Do you want to be better than this? And down to the ages, he has carried the same tactic. There is an enmity he has. There's a hatred he has for womankind because in his mind, you got me in trouble. Isn't that crazy? So ladies, you have a target. And you may not think so, but you are a target of the enemy. And vice versa, because what God has done for women is, you may not believe this, but the more you think about it, you'll understand what I'm saying here. Women have been given a sense of discernment that men don't have. Now, we often think that we men, we know what's going on. I can figure people out. No, we don't. We don't. Nicole can tell me, watch out for him, watch out for her. And 100% she's right. How does she do that? I don't know. But she has been given that sense of discernment that you need to listen. You see how she can recognize? Why? Because it happened in the garden. When that curse was given, in the curse, there is now a hatred between the snake, the serpent, the Satan himself, and womankind. He hates her. He hates you, ladies. And you have been given this discerning, like a spidey sense. You recognize when he is operating. Now, I'm not saying for a moment that women always choose what is right. No, far from that. Many times you don't, and you know the truth. But you have been given that sense of discernment, that recognition that the enemy is here. He is wandering about, seeking whom he may devour. But there is more. What is the more? It's not just Satan and womankind, but he is also against the ultimate woman. He's an ultimate woman, like a model or like a superstar or a movie star or a singer or a bodybuilder. Who is the ultimate woman? It's not one woman, it is Israel. Turn to Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. It's on the screen, but it may be hard to read. So in your Bibles, Revelation chapter 12, believe it or not, we're going to actually read the whole chapter. I never do that. But there is so much there that you need to hear. And it'll all make sense. Last book in the Bible, Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. Now a great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of how many stars? 12. 12. Is that number significant? Absolutely. How many tribes in Israel? 12. This woman is none other than Israel, the people of God. Now keep paying attention because it'll become more and more clear. Verse 2, then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. Throughout the history of the world, God's people, the people of Israel, have been persecuted, have been thrown into exile, sometimes of their own choice. Nonetheless, in the fullness of time, that woman gave birth. And who was the child? Christ. That's why we have Christmas. But pay attention to this. Behold, verse 3, another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his head. There you go, Genesis 3:15. I'll put enmity between you, snake, you, serpent, you, Satan, and the woman. Of course, it's womankind, but also the ultimate woman, which is Israel. Now listen to what happens. I'm going to read rapidly here because this is very, very important. Verse 4, his tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. That's what Herod tried to do. When the wise men came, when the Magi came from the east, he said, go find out from me. Go find out what you can so I can come worship him. And in the meantime, he gave orders to go kill every male child in the vicinity of Bethlehem. But it's not over. Listen to this. What happens here? Because this is not about the past. This is what's coming in the future in the tribulation. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. So Jesus did his work, gone. There's more there in prophecy. I've preached prophecy before. We just don't have time to go into all of that. But I just want you to get the main point. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God that they should feed her. Listen to this. 1,260 days, half of the tribulation period. The people of Israel, God's people, somehow he's going to bring back those 12 tribes, but now they are on the run because Satan himself is after them. And he's angry. Even though Jesus came, crushed his head, we'll see that in a moment, he still wants to ultimately, the last thing he does is to devour her. How interesting it is, throughout the history of the world, people are still trying to kill the Jewish people. Still trying to do that. In the Middle East, it's always Israel's at fault. How is that happening? You see, the point is, behind all of this is the serpent, is the dragon. Now pay attention, verse 7. And war broke out in heaven. This is not a war in the beginning of time. No, there was no war. Satan disobeyed God. But this is a war that will be fought. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail. Nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. Keep in mind, when Satan rebelled against God, he was not kicked out of heaven. He still had access to heaven. Hence, he came and stood and accused Job. By the way, he goes before God every single moment, accusing you and accusing me. You know, it doesn't make sense. Like, what does that mean? He goes and tells God, you see him? He's a fake. You see her, she doesn't really trust you. You see that person, you see that family, they don't love you. They love you because you bless them. Take away the blessing and they will curse you. And then who stands up for us? Jesus Christ. He said, no, by my blood, they are covered. They're good. This warfare happens constantly in heaven. But now, he has been barred from heaven. In the end of time, this will happen. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now salvation has come, and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before God day and night, has been cast down. Can you imagine that? Every single moment he's constantly saying, you see him, he's a fake, he's a blasphemer. Why do you do that? You are unfair. Constantly he talks about us. You see, you and I don't realize there is a spiritual warfare every single moment that is raging in heaven. And it's only by the grace of God that you're sitting here. Even after some of the foolish things we do, for God to love us and pour his grace upon us is because he is who he is. But there's a warfare. But now pay attention. Verse 11. This is in the tribulation. But they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore, rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time. See, even now Satan is moving, but the Holy Spirit holds him back. He can only do so much damage, but can you imagine in the tribulation where he is given complete reign? Go do what you want to do. Believe in Jesus Christ now. Now here's something powerful. Verse 13. Now when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child, but the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time. That's the half of the tribulation. From the presence of the serpent. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman. I don't know exactly how that's going to happen. Maybe a dam will break. But the Arab world has always said, we're going to push Israel into the sea. We don't know how it's going to happen, but it'll happen. They'll try. But what would God do? Listen to this. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opens its mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. You want to make sense with what's happening in the political world? Stop listening to news anchors. They're getting fired every day, by the way. Read the Bible. It tells you exactly what's happening. What's happening. And the epicenter has always been there, right there in Israel. It's so simple. See, this is what's happening. And we need to understand that this battle, this is what God decreed. He will put enmity between the serpent and the woman, womankind and the ultimate woman, Israel. The source of all the conflict in the world. But here comes the second part of the cure. Here's what's going to happen. There's going to be an enmity between what? Your seed and her seed. This is collective. It's in the plural, which means not just one single seed, but collective seed of Satan. Collective seed of the woman. Throughout humanity, there have always been 2 groups of people, descendants of Satan and descendants of the woman. Descendants of Satan are those who despise God. They want to deceive others into disobeying God. Those are the descendants of Satan. Now keep in mind, they're not genealogical descendants, they're ideological descendants. They know what is right, but they choose to disobey God. Hey, listen, none of us come in this world already in the family of Satan. We just come into this world and we are given a choice either to receive Jesus Christ or to reject him. When you reject him, you enlist in the family of Satan, the descendants of Satan. But on the other side are the descendants of the woman. They're not perfect. Eve was not perfect. She was deceived. Nonetheless, they choose to follow God. They choose to receive Jesus in their lives. And throughout history, ever since the garden, there has been a fight between the descendants of Satan and the descendants of the woman. Give you some example. Cain and Abel, right? Brothers. What did Cain do? He rose up in the field to kill his brother. But right before that happens, in Genesis chapter 4, verse 7, God tells Cain, if you do not do well, sin lies at the door and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Conquer that desire. And what did Cain choose to do? To reject God, kill his own brother, and he enlisted himself in the family of Satan. Fast forward, Jacob and Esau. Esau had the birthright. He despised his birthright, and Jacob kept begging for it, sold him that stew, got the birthright, but later on, Esau wanted the blessing of the birthright, and Jacob tricked him and got what was rightfully his. What was Esau's response? When mom and daddy die, I'm going to kill you. Are y'all getting this? The seed of Satan, the descendants of Satan, not genealogical but ideological, always hate the seed of the woman. Not genealogical, ideological, who choose to do things God's way. Fast forward. Joseph, hated by his brothers. What did they try to do? To kill him. And when they couldn't kill him, they threw him in a pit and sold him in slavery. And so God's people, the Hebrews, were in Egypt. At first it was great, and then there rose a Pharaoh who did not remember Joseph. And what did he do? He put them in slavery. He was trying to kill every male child. Isn't that amazing? In Moses' time, he was trying to kill every male child, getting the midwives to throw them into the Nile River. Let's see how much archaeology and history you know. Have you seen Pharaoh's mitre? What is in the center? Snake. Isn't that interesting? That snake, the god Uraeus, is right in the center. And for all those 400 some years, the snake was trying to enslave and destroy God's people in Egypt. And God had to send Moses, God had to send Aaron to deliver them, to set them free. You see, once you understand this, Genesis 3:15 pretty much tells you what happened in the world. And down to the ages, the same hatred has been there, even to the coming of Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ came, as you know, Herod tried to destroy him, but also the corrupt religious leaders, they tried to kill him. Listen to John chapter 8, verse 39. Very important. It's on the screen, or you can just follow along. Listen to what it says here. John 8:39. They answered, which means they're corrupt religious leaders, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the chief priests. They said to him, Abraham is our father. Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. Now, folks, I know a lot of theology, but I'll go and tell you this. If your actions don't match your words and your confession, something is wrong. You can't keep telling everybody you're a Christian and saved and still live like the devil and still do the devilish things. Am I okay with saying that? How long are you going to keep doing that and still keep claiming that you got saved because you made a prayer, or you got baptized, or you joined a church, or you serve or do ministry? What does that mean? Your actions don't match your confession. Jesus told them, you keep claiming Abraham, but you do not do the works of Abraham. Verse 40, but now you seek to, say it, it's on the screen. They were trying to kill Jesus. You see, the seed of the serpent were trying to kill the seed of the woman. Jesus was the seed of the woman. Now pay attention, this is very important. What happens here? Jesus says to them, but now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth, which I heard from God. Abraham did not do this. You do the deeds of your father. Then they said to him, listen to how hateful they are. Because they knew about the little discrepancy about, we're not quite sure if Joseph is his father. So listen to what they say. We were not born of fornication. Wow. I mean, they just cut to the core, didn't they? We have one Father, God. Jesus said to them, if God were your Father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God, nor have I come of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech? Because you're not able to listen to my word. You are of your father, the devil. Genesis 3:15 explains everything. And the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. Murdering and lying are family traits of Satan. And you say, well, I didn't kill anybody. You're killing people with your words. You're doing it. What's the difference? You're living up to your family values. Can I step out on a limb and maybe talk a little bit more on this? Our time is short, so much to cover. The family of the woman cannot hobnob and hang out and keep going and becoming one with the family of the serpent. Sooner or later, you'll catch those family values. You cannot be over here lying, cheating, doing horrible things, and still think, I can hang out with them. It's rubbing off on you. It's rubbing off on you. And that's why it's so important. Yes, we need to win the lost. Yes, Jesus met with the tax collectors and sinners. People always bring that up as if that is, right there, wow, yeah, go ahead and hang out with Satan. But because you're living in that value system, you are beginning to look more and more like that family. Where are you today? Who are your friends? Who are your friends? Oh, we're just friends. We just hang out. What are their values? What are some of the things they do? Well, I feel bad for her. Let the Holy Spirit handle that. You go over here and be with your family. Well, I feel like he doesn't have any friends, and I feel like I need to be there for him. You can be there for that person, but make sure you go back to your home. Are y'all getting this? Somebody getting this? Yes. Because you're becoming like the world. The whole time you think you're rescuing the lost. No, you're becoming the lost. You say, well, wait, I thought once saved, always saved. I don't know, maybe what was inside is coming out. There is the enmity between the serpent and the womankind, ultimately Israel. Then there's the enmity between the descendants of the serpent and the descendants of the woman, which are collective, always has been, always will be. The children of light cannot be with the children of darkness, but so long. But here's the last one. There's the enmity between the serpent and the one, the Messiah. Listen again to Genesis 3:15. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Now, between your seed and her seed was plural. What does that mean, plural? Many. Between he and you, is it plural or singular? I know it's too early in the morning.
Singular.
It's singular. Are y'all seeing how these things are laid out? Between the serpent and the womankind, ultimate woman being Israel. Between Satan's seeds, collective, and the woman's seed, there's always going to be a hatred and enmity. But finally, singular, there's a hatred between the serpent and the Messiah, singular. He is coming. Serpent is told, he will bruise your head, and we'll see if that word is a good translation, bruise, but you shall bruise his heel. Satan, because of what you did to the woman, because of how you deceived her, she is going to give birth to someone who's going to come and bruise your head. But you're going to strike at him. We'll see that in a moment. But here's the amazing thing, before we get there, about what bruise really means. Satan did not know which woman was going to do this. Neither did Eve know which of her sons would be the one. How do we know that? Because Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, when she has Cain, listen to what she says. Now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain and said what? I have acquired a man from the Lord. Isn't that sad that she did not say, my husband will crush the head of the serpent. He's like, he's useless. He just did it. So I can't, I gotta wait for somebody to come better than him. You know, it's a shame when men don't lead spiritually. They're just there. It's a shame. Ladies have to look to somebody else. Would you lead, please? Would you lead? Would you lead? And we're sitting around, well, I grew up this way. Oh, enough of that. She was mistaken again. Cain died. Cain killed Abel. Sure enough, we know he's not the one, because he joined the family of Satan. Genesis 4:25. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth. So she's thinking, okay, Abel's gone. Seth turned out to be the devil himself. What do we do with Seth? Cain turned out to be the devil himself, but what do we do with Seth? For God has appointed another seed for me instead of Abel, whom Cain killed. So what she's thinking is, okay, Cain didn't work out, Abel died. Maybe Seth's the one. Who is going to strike the serpent for what he did to me? She doesn't know. It will be thousands of years before the flood, after the flood, when another woman will bear a child. Who is she? Mary. But you see, Satan did not know. And guess what he's doing? Ladies, you have a bullseye on you. Moms, you have a bullseye on you. Because throughout history, he's been wondering, are you the one who's going to bring the one who will crush my head? Are you the one? Are you the one? Are you the one? At every delivery, he and one of his minions always show up. Are you the one? But the command has been given to every woman, coming right from Eve, that you will deliver the one who will deliver you. Like the song, Mary, did you know, right? You will deliver the one who will deliver you. Hence, Paul says in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 14. Is this too deep?
Yes, sir.
Good. I'm going to do it anyways. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived fell into transgression. Nevertheless, she will be saved in childbirth, childbearing, if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control, which is this. Every woman, since Eve knew that it's through childbearing, maybe she is the one. Now you say, well, wait a minute, Paul is writing after Jesus. Yes, Jesus already came, but the principle still carried. Raise children who will become dragon slayers. That's the call for motherhood. Now, ladies, some of you work outside the home. I have nothing against that. Nicole does as well. My mom did for many years. So nothing against all of that. But don't ever think motherhood or staying at home with your children is somehow, second class or third class. That's not the case. I've had ladies, I talk to them, and I say, what do you do? I just instinctively ask that question. Oh, well, I just stay at home. No, it's not beneath your husband or whoever to stay at home or to work part-time and take care of your kids, because that's the principle that was given. Even though Jesus came, the principle still carried on. Isn't that beautiful? The scripture, how it hangs together. But God became more and more specific. He knew exactly who was going to be the one. It's not just going to be any woman anywhere now. It's going to be through Abraham's line. Hence Genesis 12:7. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants. The word actually is not descendants, it's seed, zerah. To your seed I will give this land. Genesis 13 verse 15. For all the land which you see I give to you and your seed forever. And I will make your seeds as the dust of the earth. There was not just some random person. Everything was laid out. God became more and more specific. And then right there in the town of Nazareth, through the line of David, through the line of Judah, through the line of Jacob and Isaac and Abraham, came the one called Emmanuel. But now, here's something, and we'll close with this. How will this seed of the woman, this man, will break this curse? It says what in Genesis 3:15? He shall bruise your head. The Hebrew word is suf. It's more than just bruise. The idea behind it is crush. The idea behind it is strike. He will strike your head, he will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. Suf. Now here's a question. If I get a cut in my heel or a strike in my heel, I can still live. It's not a mortal blow. But what happens if my head, my skull is crushed? It's over. It's done. So how does this apply here? Jesus Christ came and Satan tried to kill him through Herod. He tried to kill him many times, even tried to throw him over the cliff and they tried to murder him, but it did not work. And then comes that point, Passion Week we call it, when Jesus was falsely tried. The whole time Satan is thinking, I'm striking at his heel. The poison is running through his system. I am going to kill the Son of God. Not sure what God's plan is now because I killed it. And he is taken to the cross. One of his own, Judas, possessed by Satan, betrays him. The chief priests, the scribes, the Sanhedrin turns against him. Satan is very happy. He's thinking, wow, I've done it. And guess what? He died in a couple of hours. We're putting him in the grave. It is signed, sealed, and delivered. My venom worked. What he didn't realize is the whole time Jesus had the other foot up, like a crosshairs right on top of Satan's head. He didn't even know his head got crushed. Because on the third day, Jesus rose again. And once and for all, he has destroyed the death. He has destroyed grave. Grave has no sting. Death has no sting. He has taken captivity captive. He has broken the powers and principalities. Everything is under the feet of Jesus Christ. Now, is Satan still slithering around? Of course he is. Still with a broken, crushed skull, he's still walking about. He is still moving about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So he shows up in your marriage. He shows up in your kids' lives. He shows up in the church. He shows up in our community. He's showing up in our world right now in a big way. But his power is broken. You know, I'll say this and we'll close. We often think all this is just made up. You know, Pastor Shah, it's so interesting how you put all this together and you know how you made all this work from Genesis to Revelation and all that. I didn't make this up. Did you know that even before the coming of Jesus, the Jewish Talmud talked about the heels of the Messiah? Hundreds of years before the coming of Christ, they would talk about the heels of the Messiah. And sure enough, Jesus came and destroyed him. And one day he will ultimately destroy him. The question for us is, have you taken the cure? Or are you still in the family of Satan? Keep rejecting Christ, that's where you are. Keep justifying your sin, your works don't match your confession. You're blaming this person and that event and this event. Ultimately, you are simply proving your values. Your family values are here. You're in for a very rude awakening on the other side. What do you believe? Let me say this because this is very important, very, very important, more than anything else I've said today. Sometimes I'll hear people talk about the devil. They'll say things like, well, I stomp on his head and I tell the devil this and I tell him that. And they'll talk about stuff like, if he reminds you of your past, remind him of his future. Have you heard people say that? You're an idiot. Stop doing that. Read the Bible carefully. Even Michael the archangel did not accuse Satan directly. Many of those people who do that kind of stuff, just watch their families, their lives. They have so many problems, you don't know what to do with them. You're challenging Satan? You know what I just did here? This was not to mock him. I simply preached the word as I stood behind the cross. That's it. Well, he that is in me is greater than he that... You deserve to be attacked. Don't say that. The purpose of that promise, he that is in me is greater than he that is in the world, is to remind you that he can never get to you. It's not for you to declare a war on the enemy. You know how people say that, churches say that, we're here to declare, we take... Watch them. In just a couple of months, they're gone. They have so many troubles in that church. They have so many problems. Leaders come out doing crazy stuff. And you go, what just happened? Wow, he ran off with this wife or somebody else's stuff. Or they stole this and stole. You were challenging the enemy? No, the purpose of this was to simply preach the truth. But I'm going to stay in my lane. And Jesus is in my lane. I'm standing behind him. And I know that he is Lord, he is victorious, and my victory is in him, not my own little battle thing I'm going to do somewhere. No, you're not. Every weapon that is given to us is defensive. Did you notice that in Ephesians? It's all defensive. To stand. Today, as we go on our time of invitation, never giving your heart to the Lord, come and do that today. Maybe this morning you have, but lately Satan has wrapped his coils around you, around your mind, around your heart. You are just fixated on this problem, this bitterness, this envy, this lust, this greed, this friend. You're just going, you have no idea, he's choking the life out of you. God can set you free. If you truly belong to him, you are free indeed. But if you don't, today's the day to receive him. Maybe you know somebody, you need to come pray for them. Come pray for them. Pray for them. God will set them free. Would you stand together?